Good morning, everybody. You know what today is, don't you? Of course you know. It's Tuesday, Testy Tuesday. I have a test for you, but I'm going to tell you something. This one's going to be a little bit different than other tests in that I'm going to give you so many clues, I think you might come up with the right answer. But at the same time, don't be tricked. You might come up with the wrong answer. What I'm asking you today to tell me is who has the longest book in the Old Testament? What book of the Old Testament is the longest? Are you ready? Well, here's how I'm going to give you my clues. I'm going to give you the four answers, and I'm also going to tell you how many chapters are in each one. So you can tell me who's the longest. All right, let's start out with that combination of Ezra and Nehemiah. They were originally, even though it's broken up in our older testaments that we have, they were one book. And together they have 23 chapters. All right? Then you have Ezekiel, one of the major prophets, 48 chapters. You have Jeremiah, 52 chapters. You have Isaiah, 66 chapters. Now again, don't be deceived, or maybe it is telling the truth. Which one is the longest? All right, you have your answer? The answer is Jeremiah. Jeremiah is only 52 chapters long. Isaiah is 66. But you go by the word count, the number of words in each of those books. In the Hebrew, not in any other language, but in Hebrew. In Hebrew, Jeremiah is definitely the longest. Now, stay tuned for a wild, weird, and wacky word of the world on Saturday. We'll have some other interesting things about that prophet, Jeremiah, as well. But Jeremiah, he pops up this year in our lectionary about 1/5 of the time for our Older Testament lessons. Isn't that something? Yeah, 1/5 of the time, just about. So what's he all about, and what are we talking about in our text for this coming Sunday where he pops up again? It's Jeremiah, the 17th chapter, verses 5 through 10. Now, if you read the first 4 verses, that's helpful because it tells you what's going on in verses 5 through 10. Jeremiah is laying it out for the people what is wrong in their lives. And in those first 4 verses tells us specifically it's because you're going out and worshiping other gods. You're worshiping Baal. So you're going to be punished for it. And punishment is not always something that God rains down upon you. It's the consequence of you not being faithful to Yahweh. All right? That's pretty important to remember. You'll see that a lot through Jeremiah. So when we get to verses 5 through 10, all of a sudden it's like, hey, we're reading Psalm 1 all over again. And that's our psalm for this Sunday too, which we talked about yesterday. And it's kind of like black and white. It's either this or it's that, and there's no in between. What do you mean by that? Well, you're either righteous or you're not righteous. You're either with Yahweh or you're not with Yahweh. And there's kind of no in between. There's no wiggle room there. And that sounds an awful lot like Psalm 1. So it starts out in the first couple verses that you're cursed if you put your trust in mere mortals. Now, that doesn't mean you don't trust other people. It means you're putting them ahead of your trust in God, in Yahweh. And that is precisely the issue that's going on here, because the people of Judah and Israel, for that matter, earlier, but especially Judah to the south, they're trying to put all their trust in these military alliances they're making with Egypt to push away that influence of Babylon. And Babylon, they finally get fed up with it and just go in and wipe them out. So that's what Jeremiah is saying. Don't do that. Move towards some sort of an agreement, some sort of peaceful pact with Babylon, because they're just way too powerful. Trust God to get you through all this tough time. No, we're going to go make our political alliance with Egypt and take our chances. That didn't work out too well. But it talks about people who do that are like plants. They're out there in the desert and they're parched and they're drying up. And it says there, and this is interesting in verse 6, they shall not see when relief comes. So when there is help on the way, they don't see it. Remember that word for see, because that shows up later on in the next couple verses when it talks about those who are blessed by God. It's those whose trust is in the Lord, not in other people, number one, but in the Lord, number one. Excuse me. And they're going to be like that tree that's planted right near a stream, near a source of water, where when the bad times and the tough times do come, when there is a drought, those roots are so deep that they tap into that source of water and they're able to continue to flourish. Okay? And it says here, it shall not fear when the heat comes. Remember the word for see earlier? That word for fear and see are like one letter difference in the Hebrew. So it's a play on words that's going on within this passage. So if you put your trust in human beings, you won't see the good stuff when it's there for you. If you put your trust in Yahweh, you won't fear when the bad stuff surrounds you. All right, so it's a pretty cool, poetic type of movement in the prophet Jeremiah here. But then you get to verse 9 and 10, and it kind of goes in a wholly different direction. And this is where a lot of people are pretty sure, and we'll talk about this on Saturday too, that Jeremiah was written by a couple different prophets or in different time frames of the prophet Jeremiah, or even by his secretary, who may have written and interpolated some things. And this kind of got stuck in there because the word heart, in talking about heart, pops up earlier in the first verse that we look at this week. And here it is again. The heart is devious above all else. It is perverse. Who can understand it? Why are you talking about that? Well, it goes on to say, I, the Lord, test the mind and search the heart. In other words, God looks right into us, into the innermost being of us, and knows what's going on the inside. You can't fool God. Now, what's interesting is this. The word mind is the word for kidneys in Hebrew. The word heart is the word for heart. So it's all about your guts and your gut feeling. And the kidneys were where they believed emanated the feelings of emotions, your feelings, emotions, anger, hatred, love, all that came from your kidneys. The heart, on the other hand, is your willpower, your mind, your strength, what you purposefully set out to do. It's your decision-making part of the inner being. So when you talk about having a gut feeling, hey, that comes from the ancients who believed that down here in your gut is where it all begins. Good and bad, good and evil. So an interesting passage. And again, that's why Psalm 1 is associated not only with our Old Testament lesson, but also coming up with our gospel reading from Luke, the 6th chapter this week. And we'll talk about that on Thursday. No, Friday. Yeah, maybe Thursday and Friday. Maybe we'll talk about all of them on Coffee Shop Thursday. There you go. God's blessings be with you. And if you have a gut feeling that you need to get up and start doing some work, get your throat unclogged like I need to, maybe I need to drink just a little more coffee, that'll clear it up, then get out there and do it. I have a gut feeling that's what I need to do. God's blessings be with you.